Goffstown School Deliberative Meeting, formerly known in a long lost time as the Goffstown School Meeting. I'm Jim Raymond, the school district moderator. Before we begin, I want to tell you about what I call the rules for seating. In accordance with the Governor's Emergency Order number 74, as extended by Emergency Order 81, and in accordance with the instructions given to election officials by the New Hampshire Secretary of State and the New Hampshire Attorney General, and in accordance with the guidance by the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and with the authority given the moderator by RSA 40:4, we are requiring that anybody in the large gym wear masks at all times, covering your mouths and your nose. Everybody got that? Since voting is a constitution, and I'll explain to you why the nose is important if you wish to know, but that's where the viruses are. Because voting is a constitutional right, and we want everybody's vote to be counted, sometimes whether you like them or not, we have to provide and are providing an alternate seating room, which is in the two rooms that way, and I forget, Brian, what you call that room. Cafeteria, that's right. And they're set up, and I'm seeing it on my screen, with seats and microphones, and they can participate in the meeting with the microphone there as much as here. And if there's any action taken, we will count the votes of that room as well. They're under the same rules for people who choose to sit in there. As I look, I currently see nobody there, but if anybody comes, just so you know, they are part of the meeting. And in addition, as we were told earlier, we've marked seating so you'll keep 6 feet distances for those who don't live together or have other relationships in accordance with the governor's order. Everybody clear on that? If you don't like the rules, blame the moderator, which is me, but those are the rules we will operate under. Okay, with that happy note, we will open the meeting. Unfortunately, because of COVID, the high school musical is not being put on. They will not sing for us. Scott Gross offered to hum instead. Taking a rain check, we'll have him do that afterwards. But if you'll stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Where is the flag? Oh, there you go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In lieu of the chorus, I did ask Scott DeRocher, the music director, to bring us up to date on what the music department is doing, because they will be putting on a performance. Josh, if you can do that now. As you recall from prior meetings, their singing is usually the high point of the meeting, so I want you to at least know we're doing something. Josh.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond, and I'm happy to report, with thanks to the school board for all of their support and the SAU, we are putting on a musical this year. Our annual musical will actually be a movie, and our students and faculty in the Performing Arts Department are working very hard to put that on. We anticipate that will happen in mid-March. And stay tuned to announcements from the high school, email, social media, for how you can see that. Tickets will be available to have a stream right in your house to be able to watch the Addams Family musical in quarantine. So again, coming soon in March. Thank you for your support. Thank you, Mr. Raymond.
The music department is one of the jewels in our crown, so I'm glad we can give them a chance to glow a little bit. Brian Balke, the superintendent, is going to bring us up to date on some COVID-related issues and sort of the informational function before we go into the business. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good morning, everyone. It's very nice to see you all. Really appreciate everyone coming out this morning. I thought before we got into the warrant articles and the business of our deliberative session that I'd just speak in generalities a little bit about some updates around COVID and what we've been doing in our schools. We have been deeply committed ideologically from the beginning to having our students in person. So when the governor announced last March that schools would be closed, we quickly pivoted and adjusted to remote learning. This had a massive learning curve for everyone involved. Parents, teachers, kids, everyone really had an awful lot to learn with all these new requirements. We spent the spring and all summer planning on how we would reopen our schools. We are operating in a hybrid model where we have about half of our kids in every day. We have 6-foot distancing in our classrooms. And thus far, we've had a lot of success with our model. A lot of schools have closed down between Thanksgiving and the end of January. We did not take that approach. We stayed open, and to date, if you are so inclined, we post all of our information on our website, and we've had 156 cases thus far in the SAU that have been either students or staff that have been positive. So we've done a lot of contact tracing. There are too many people to thank, but certainly all the members of the school board. It's not easy to be a school board member at any point in time, but during a pandemic, even more challenging than ever. Our administrators, our teachers, our support staff, everyone has just really rallied and done a great job. I'd be happy if the moderator would allow it. I'd be happy to answer any questions that people might have about COVID, what we're doing, what our responses are. We've had a real struggle with space, so I think everyone in the community is largely aware that our elementary schools are overcrowded. They're small. All of our classrooms, we don't have a single classroom at Maple Ave or at Bartlett that meets the current minimum standards for square footage. They're all small. And so the idea of having classrooms with 25 kids in them in a classroom that's 650 to 700 or even 750 square feet, it just mathematically doesn't work out. So we've continued to struggle with space and a lot of challenges along with it. But I will say your teachers, your educators, your administrators are resilient. We have been deeply committed to staying open. I hope to get more kids back for more time on campus as hopefully our numbers continue to progress and get better. Pieces that we still are hoping that we'll be getting some assistance. We'd love to have the ability to do testing in the schools. We'd love to have access to testing, some of those pieces. But Mr. Raymond, if it's appropriate, I'd love to just open it up in general if anyone has any questions about our response to COVID or anything that I can respond to from those of you who are here this morning. Well, thank you. I would again just say, I really appreciate everyone being here. This is an important step in the democratic process. We're glad to keep this moving forward. Thank you all for your support, and thank you so much for being here and participating. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Brian. I will repeat this periodically to the point where you'll be tired of hearing it, but for the benefit of the people who have come in since the opening, if you're sitting in this room, you must have a mask on. If you cannot, you'll be sitting in the cafeteria, and that's a mask covering your mouth and your nose at all times, in accordance with the governor's orders. And we're requesting that you keep appropriate distance in the stand. I have to congratulate our state legislature for just pointing that out to a late arrival. That is important. Okay, as in prior years, I think it's important to recognize the people who contribute to getting to this point for the school district. I'll start with Joanne Duffy, the secretary for the school district clerk, actually. The school board members, they're appropriately spread out. I'm going to ask that you raise your hand when I list your name. Heather and I was joking with me earlier, this is my annual opportunity to massacre names. I look forward to it. I take full advantage of it each year, and I don't get any better from year to year, so just laugh quietly if I massacre your name. Heather Trapaz, the chair. Red Chafee. The Vice Chair, Dan Cloutier, is Dan here? Dan's on Zoom. Okay, Dan's on, wave to him. Terry Fisher, Jenny McKinnon, Janelle O'Brien, Tim Stetson, no, okay, Jared Talbot, and Ellen Vermakowitz. Is she on Zoom? Over there, Ellen, thank you. You've already met Brian Balke, the superintendent. I don't know if Mary Claire Berry is here, the assistant. Okay, Scott Gross, the business administrator, and where's Denise Moore, the executive assistant? She's critical. Anything I'm reading from, she gave me, so I want to give her credit for setting up the meeting. For the budget committee, which plays an important role, if you're here, if you'll just stand briefly, I didn't check to see who is. Cole Reel, chair, is on Zoom. Okay, Jeffrey O'Brien, Joe Alexander, Spencer Diaz, Elizabeth Dubrel, Greg Flegel, Bill Cordes, Dennis Lynch, Richard Manzo, Eileen McNinney, Fred Platt, and Skylar Mark Son are the budget committee members. Also sitting on as representatives from other committees, Mark LeMay from the select board, Richard Fletcher, the village district, and Jared Talbot. I don't know if there are any select board members here. I'll name them because one of the worst things you can do is forget to name somebody who's in front of you. Collis Adams, Kelly Boyer, Chet Bowen, Peter Georgiantis, and Mark LeMay. Are any of them here? I don't see any. I do note there's state representatives who are here, and I appreciate their coming. Joe Alexander and Claire Rouillard. Are there any others? No, I didn't see any. And again, we are delighted to have with us as our distinguished guest and final lecturer of the evening. We'll give him a chance to say a few words. Senator Lou D'Alessandro sitting up front. Remind me if in my urge to get us out of here, I forget Lou, but he's not one to overlook easily. Okay, let's talk for a minute. Before we do that, we're going to go to the award presentation, which we do every year to award faculty. Retta is going to present their Retta Chafee.
And I'll correct you, it's Chaffee, so you can forget that next year. Okay. It's my pleasure.
But I do that every year. So
Yeah. It's my pleasure today to be able to present 2 awards on behalf of the Goffstown School Board. And I think we all know from the great work that's happening in the schools that there are a lot of people involved that are doing an excellent job. But this is an opportunity for us to recognize individuals, organizations that have gone above and beyond. So we have 2 awards that we'll be presenting today. And it's somewhat different this year. The recipients actually don't know who they are, so it's an extra surprise. So the first award will be the Dream People Award, I believe. And, okay, can you hear me now? Okay, so the first award is the Dreamkeeper Award, and each year the school board gives this in recognition of people or organizations in the community that have truly gone the extra mile to make the Goffstown dream of providing a superior education a reality. And the recipients of this award have demonstrated exceptional service to our school district in a variety of ways, included but not limited to acts of heroism and achievement, accomplishment, recognized at the state and national level, a major investment that enhances education, significant contribution to the district and service which enhances the quality of education in our schools, and outstanding academic, athletic, or community service achievement. So to introduce the award and the recipients, we have a video. Yeah.
1 second. Scott, can you make this one a host? Thank you.
Hello and welcome. I'm Brian Balkin, a very proud superintendent of schools, serving the communities of Goffstown and Boston. Every year, the Goffstown School Board gives out 2 special awards to deserving recipients. This year, our process of recognition might look a little different than it normally does in the past, but nonetheless, we'd like to still recognize our wonderful recipients this year of the Dreamkeeper Award. The Dreamkeeper Award is given to individuals that truly go the extra mile and exemplify what it means to go above and beyond on behalf of students in the Goffstown schools. This year, on behalf of the Goffstown School Board, I couldn't be more proud to recognize all of the nurses in SAU 19, and I'd like to recognize each of them individually. At Goffstown High School, congratulations to Jennifer Roche, as well as Kathy Pender from Goffstown High School. Sarah Matatal at Mountain View Middle School, Susan Potvin at Mountain View Middle School, Colin Belter from Maple Ave, Kathy Whitney from Bartlett, Olivia Winfield from Glen Lake, and Cherise Salter from New Boston Central School. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude and appreciation for the incredible hard work that this group of dedicated, talented nurses have done on behalf of our students in the Goffstown School District. During the pandemic, the work that they've done has been instrumental in our ability to open schools and to make sure that we're able to keep everyone safe and to keep our schools open and functioning. So with much appreciation on behalf of the school board, thank you so much to all of our great nurses. Congratulations, this is well deserved. Thank you.
For our second award is the Cornerstone Award, and this is presented in recognition of achievements by staff members as well as community members working within our schools who have demonstrated outstanding support of student learning. This may include job performance, involvement in district activities, as well as volunteer work and service to the school district. The award recognizes individuals whose service has been truly outstanding to the overall educational climate of the school district and exhibits commitment, good human relations skills, loyalty, dedication, and good organizational and work habits.
Cornerstone?
Hello and welcome. I'm Brian Balkin, a very proud superintendent of schools, serving the communities of Goffstown and Boston. It's my honor this year, on behalf of the Goffstown School Board, to present the annual winner, and in this case, winners, 2, for the Cornerstone Award. This is a special award that the school board gives out every year to recognize certain individuals or groups. Specifically, this is an award that's designed to recognize people who have demonstrated outstanding support of student learning. And this includes people who have overall contributed to the climate of our schools, the work with kids, loyalty, dedication, and just people who have really gone above and beyond on behalf of our Goffstown students. And this year, we have 2 winners, and I'd like to first recognize Mrs. Amy O'Reilly. Amy O'Reilly is our library media specialist at Mountain View Middle School. And a few of the things that people said about Amy that I thought were really outstanding to see is that she always goes the extra mile. She's done so much to help with everyone as we transition to remote learning. There are a number of other comments that she's kind, she works hard, she's a life preserver, she's become the resident go-to. I couldn't be more proud and more appreciative of Amy. And here are some special remarks from Principal Kohler. Mrs. Kohler?
Welcoming and engaging. These are two words that I would use to describe the Library Media Center at Mountain View, and that's truly because of the efforts of Amy O'Reilly, our truly exceptional library media specialist that we have on staff. Prior to last March, the library had always been the hub of our building, and that didn't change when the pandemic hit. Amy made sure she found ways to get books into the hands of our students and helped all of our students and staff pivot to our remote learning platforms. She also has helped on various committees, helped with video production, and so many behind-the-scenes things at Mountain View. The best part about Amy is she's truly passionate about what she does. She also makes sure that she keeps up with everything going on in the technology world and does so with a smile on her face. I couldn't be more proud to have Amy O'Reilly on staff at Mountain View. This is a well-deserved honor. Congratulations, Amy.
Next, our second winner of the Cornerstone Award this year is Mrs. Barbara Carey, who is one of our outstanding faculty members at Goffstown High School. Barb Carey has been described a number of different ways, but she is ferocious in helping her kids learn. She has an incredible specialty in the area of mathematics and is able to work really hard and help students who struggle learning math, and particularly higher math courses. She's always there early. I've been told that there are a number of times that she gets there so early that she's been at school before I make the snow call. So sorry about that, Mrs. Carey. Here are some special remarks from Principal McBride about Mrs. Carey.
Barb Carey has been an exceptional teacher at Goffstown High School for the past 16 years. You will see her coming into the building with the custodians who open it up. And twice a week you'll see her as one of the last people that leaves the building, because besides being an outstanding special education teacher during the day, she works in our adult ed program and has for over a decade. Barb teaches math to the best of her ability. She motivates, she inspires, she makes a difference. She is exceptional at making relationships with her students. To her, it's critical and important to know who they are, what makes them tick, and she meets them where they're at, and she teaches math to the best of her ability to every single student who sits in front of her during the day or in the evening. And Barb, from all of us, congratulations on this well-deserved honor. We are so happy for you, and we're more happy to call you a colleague and friend. Well done. Congratulations.
I'd like to offer my congratulations on behalf of the Goffstown School Board to our two outstanding educators who are this year's recipients of the Cornerstone Award, Amy O'Reilly and Barb Carey. Thank you so much for everything you do for our students. Thank you for everything you contribute to our schools. We're exceptionally grateful and we're very proud of you. Thank you and congratulations for this well-deserved honor.
These recipients will be awarded a certificate, and they'll have their names posted on a plaque in the SAU office. In addition, a press release will be sent out, and the videos will be shared on social media, and I'm sure within the schools as well. So congratulations to all the recipients.
Thank you. Retta did remind me for approximately the last 18 years I've mispronounced her last name, and I didn't do any better this year, but I'll try next year, but don't count on it. You've heard this lecture before, many of you, many times, but I will give the condensed version of what we're doing and how we're going to do it at the deliberative session. As you probably know, Goffstown, both on the school side and the town, have adopted what was called the official ballot referendum system. It's an RSA 40:13, known as SB 2, Senate Bill 2, which is the name of the bill that initially authorized it. It separated the traditional town of school meeting into two sessions. Some of you remember the old days when we'd have almost 1,000 people crammed into the gym to debate and vote. Now we have two different sessions. We have the deliberative session, which you're at today, where we discuss, debate, and can amend warrant articles. We cannot add new ones, but we can, with some constraints, amend. At the end of the meeting, whatever this group has either voted on or left without amending will go on the ballot and be voted on by written ballot, the official ballot, at the ballot day, which is the traditional town meeting day, the second Tuesday in March. Now, because of COVID this year, towns are now authorized to extend that date. They had some limited authorization before. As far as I know, Goffstown is planning to go forward with the election on the traditional second Tuesday in March. And if somebody will pull out your calendar and confirm this, I believe that's March 9th. So the balloting will, I'm hearing people say yes, believe them, not me. Just as we vote every year there. And that's a combined school and town vote. So what we'll do today is the warrant articles as they come up, we'll have them explained by the school board or by Scott Gross, the business manager. We'll entertain questions. We can entertain motions to amend within certain constraints. If there's a vote to amend, we'll take that, and that may determine the final wording. If there's nothing, no amendments, the article will go on the warrant for voting at balloting day in the form presented. Rules of procedure. We follow that well-published volume of procedural rules called Raymond's Rules of Fairness and Civil Discourse. We expect all discussion to be civil. You cannot make any negative comments about individuals or their motives. Comments are to be addressed to the moderator, me. You're not entitled to call on people to answer questions. You may pose questions to me, and we'll give the board or whomever an opportunity to answer, but they're not required to. We've done this before. You all know this. If you have questions for particular individuals, you can talk to them in the lobby at halftime, but not during the meeting. If you wish to make a motion, except for procedural motions, when my best supporter makes a motion to adjourn at the end, or motions to limit reconsideration can be made verbally, but motions to amend, I'll expect you to state it in orally, and then come up, and I have a form for you to fill in the form of the motion, because we want to make sure we have it correct. There are a few statutory rules. I won't go through them all. Rodney does in great detail. You can go to the town meeting and hear them. But the most important for us is a written secret ballot, which I'm not inviting, but you may do, has to have 5 written signatures of people in attendance at the meeting. So what we'll do is we'll call up each article. I'll read them. Fortunately, there are only 2. The school board will present, and then we'll ask for questions. I'm going to reserve the right to put time limits on comments. You probably have been watching your stock on Reddit and want to go make some more trades when you get home, so we hope to get you out of here as soon as we can. So I'm going to limit comments to a reasonable time, typically not more than 3 minutes. Now, you were given voting cards when you came. If we have a vote, and I'm not clear on the voice vote, we will want you to hold these up. We'll take what's called a standing counter, counting of the house. I have counters all prepared. If we do a written vote, this is your ballot vote, this is your ticket to admission. You have to show this. I have not segregated non-residents from residents because there's so few of us. But look around when we do take a vote, and if you see somebody without a card yelling loudly, yay or nay, let me know. I'm assuming they won't. And don't lose these, please. Okay, this is all old hat for those of you who come frequently. It can be very confusing to anybody new or who hasn't, and we want you to feel part of the proceeding. So does anybody have any questions on the procedure? If not, we'll jump right into the warrant. In the old days, they used to read the whole warrant, including the posting notice. You don't have to do that, so we're not going to. There are 3 articles. The first article on the warrant is the election of officers. That is a matter that is not amendable or addressed at this meeting. That will be on the ballot. So we're going to skip that. We're going to go right to Article 2, which is the operating budget. Now, many articles have a prescribed wording. This is what the statute says and what the DRA, Department of Revenue Administration, requires. And this is an example of a required wording. The only part that can be amended is the amount. I will read it briefly. For those of you who are watching, I'm sure there are thousands who are watching on television. Shall the Goffstown School District raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session, which is what we're at now, for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $47,743,102. Shall this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $47,633,091, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Goffstown School District or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with the statute to take up the issue of a revised operating budget. This warrant does not include appropriations in any other warrant articles. Let me explain briefly the default budget. Under the Official Ballot Act, a statute we adopted, there's a procedure that you come to voting day and the budget is not approved. Everybody votes no. You got to do something. It has to be a fallback. So the statute created this fallback budget, which is basically, it's called the default budget. It's based roughly on last year's, and if somebody has a question, ask Scott Gross how that's computed. There's some adjustment, but it's a way to have a fallback. Or the board, in its discretion, can call for another special meeting. So those are the two choices if people vote no at the special meeting. But we're not dealing with that today. We're just dealing with the operating budget as presented. Anybody have any questions on that? Okay, we bring things forward for discussion under rules of procedure by motion, seconded, then it comes forward for discussion. So with that, Jared, do you have a motion to make? Bring it forward for discussion. Well said. Seconded, Ellen? Okay, seconds the motion. Scott, you're speaking to the operating budget?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and welcome everyone. Before I get started, I do want to thank Steve, our IT director, as well as Josh DeRocher, Adam McCune in GTV, and a whole host of other people who put this together. We ordinarily have this in the auditorium, but in order to do this, this required a lot of manpower, and I want to thank all those folks who put this together, including our facilities folks. So my name is Scott Gross, and I'm the business administrator for SAU 19, and I'm going to present to you the Goffstown budget. And it's a little delayed, I think, Steve. So your budget, as we... Okay. So your budget, as the moderator mentioned, is $47,743,102,000. And this was recommended by the school board 9-0, and also recommended by the budget committee 12-0. So as the moderator mentioned, you have your proposed budget and you have your default budget. The default budget this year is $110,011 under the proposed budget, and I'm going to explain that to you a little bit later on in the presentation. So our budget, the appropriation, is based upon three different funds. You have your general fund, and this is where the vast majority of the money is spent in the school budget. Then you have your food service budget, and again, this is just food service operations. This fund, the monies are not raised by taxation. These are monies that are raised by grants that we get from the federal government, USDA, et cetera, as well as the food service sales, students who are purchasing meals. And then lastly, we have what's called a special revenue or a grants budget. And this is, again, any money that gets spent, there must be corresponding revenue associated with it. So again, not raised by taxation. So this is an overview of the general fund portion of the budget. And you'll see that last year we had a budget of $43,725,000 and change. And this year it's $45,494,000 and change. And it's almost a little over $1.7 million difference. One of the major drivers of the general fund budget increase this year was an increase in the retirement, the New Hampshire retirement contributions. And this was a really substantial increase. So it was 1.6% of the entire 4% increase in the general fund budget. And I'm going to go over that a little bit as well. So what accounts for the budget increases this year? There are probably 5 or 6 major drivers. Increased special education costs. So these are mostly mandated by student needs and individualized educational plans. So the students need special services, and that drives those costs. We also have corresponding personnel costs, and the voters approved over the last couple of years teacher contracts and support staff contracts, and those are part of the overall increase. We saw this year a health insurance cost increase of 6%, and this is always one of the more volatile parts of any budget, whether it be school or town. And a 6% increase is a decent amount, but it's, I think the town unfortunately had a higher one. So it's one of those pieces that's kind of volatile. So as I mentioned before, the retirement employer contribution part of it, that went up 18% for teachers and 26% for staff. So that is a really big factor. Again, over $730,000 of our increase was just in that alone. Lastly, we had transportation costs. So there was a bill that was passed in the House, signed by the governor, and that was mandated kindergarten transportation. Well, before this bill, transportation was required, mandated, grades 1 through 8. Then the bill was amended to include K through 8. Well, unfortunately, we're one of the few towns in New Hampshire that offers half-day kindergarten, so we were then required to provide midday transportation, picking kids up in the middle of the day and bringing them home, vice versa, and that was something that we had to budget for, which we didn't have before. So it's one of those things where sometimes there's well-intended laws, but there are some financial consequences for the local taxpayer. This happens to be one of them. And then last but not least, another major driver was information technology. We have, like so many other districts across the country and probably across the world, we have had to rely heavily on information IT during remote learning. That includes data security, includes your licenses, software, hardware, you name it. And there are some increases in the budget so that we can sustain the current level of IT that we have right now. So that's probably more critical now than ever. When we go through the budget process, one of the things that we talk a lot about our expenditures, but equally as important, in my opinion, are your revenues. And so I wanted to show you, where the breakdown is. So you'll see that the first part is we get some local revenues. And I happen to see a member from the New Boston School Board here, as well as the principal. So we derive a great deal of revenue by having and sharing our educational experience with the community of New Boston. So they've been fantastic partners. And with that comes tuition revenue, which helps offset the expenses for running Goffstown's educational system. And we're projecting that next year that'll be a little over 7.8 million. Then we get state revenues, a little under $500,000. Federal revenues, these are mostly grants again that are IDEA, which is a special education grant, and many others. That's about 1.65 million. And we're also, what also impacts things like the tax rate are what's called your use of fund balance. So use of fund balance are monies that are not spent in your budget from the current year, as well as any unanticipated revenues. So last year and this year, we're gonna be, I'm projecting we're gonna have a higher use of fund balance simply because we're seeing grant monies that are coming in from the federal government, as well as under expenditures in certain lines of our budget due to COVID-19. So I'm predicting a fairly good use of fund balance there. Then we have what's called New Hampshire adequacy. And I see our state reps, I see our state senator. I talk to Joe Alexander and Claire and Lou all the time about this particular topic. And we're seeing a net decrease in our adequacy. And I've talked to our state reps and our senator about this, and we're very hopeful there's bipartisan support for a fix here. We saw some revenue decreases associated with COVID-19 because the formula includes some metrics that are tied to some of the consequences of COVID, and we're hopeful that there'll be a legislative fix to replenish that. So it's my hope, I'm playing it very conservative here, when you see that 7,290,967 number, that number is gonna be $200,000 to $300,000 higher. Hopefully, Joe, Claire, and Senator Lou, right? Hopefully. And then it's SWEPT is our statewide property tax, and projecting a little bit more there. Last year, we got a grant from the state, it was called Fiscal Capacity Disparity Aid from New Hampshire, and that helped with that Glen Lake addition. So we put a nice addition onto Glen Lake because we had space needs over there, and that's where we spent the vast majority of that. We spent $900,000 of that 1.35 million, the rest went to tax relief. This year that goes away, that was a one-timer, but I want to thank our legislator and our senator for sponsoring and passing that. So what you'll see here net is a decrease from last year. I'm hopeful that we'll see a very stable revenue picture, maybe a little bit higher. But the other thing that we're very hopeful for is that we're getting some federal grants, and that will help us, in the next year as we kind of navigate COVID-19 and the extra expenses that we have with social distancing and PPE and things like that. So Jim wanted me to do a very long presentation about the default budget and the calculation, but then he nixed it.
No, you can do it later
When I'm humming, okay. So as Jim said, the default budget is in place so that in case the proposed budget fails, this is the budget that would be used to continue to operate the school district. And as I mentioned before, the default budget is $110,000 less than the proposed budget. And I'm going to go over that next with you, what some of those things are. So the default budget is essentially your current budget, this year's budget, and then you take out any one-time expenditures. So I'm going to give you an example of a one-time expenditure that we took out. Last year, we spent over $50,000 on a server, computer hardware. And we didn't have that expense in our next year's budget. So that one comes out. It was a one-time expense, and we remove it. We have expenses that are mandated by contractual obligations for our teachers. Those stay in the default. We also have an area agreement, which is an agreement that was voted by the taxpayers. In our budget this year, we have to do an appraisal on all of our buildings once every 5 years, and that's part of the budget for next year, and that's part of the default. And so these are just some examples of why it would be in a default. As I mentioned before, if there's a state law mandating that you have to provide transportation for kindergarten, then that becomes part of the default as well. So the school board every year reviews the default budget. I make my recommendations, as does the superintendent, and then the school board signs off on that. So these are just examples of why there's reductions or why there are some additions to that default. So this is a slide that really, we do this every year to try to demonstrate what our enrollment is. And for the most part, we're bucking the trend in New Hampshire. Most communities are seeing decreases in their enrollment, but in Goffstown, we're not really seeing that. As you can see here, we're very steady. And I'd say that this year's enrollment was a little bit of an anomaly due to COVID-19 because we did have some families opt out. They might have homeschooled or decided to send their children to other places, but for the most part, I think what we're seeing here in Goffstown is a super hot real estate market, and people really like the school system, and we're not seeing those decreases. As a matter of fact, we're seeing overcrowded situations in our elementary schools right now, and I know that our neighbors in New Boston are having similar experiences as well. So Goffstown and New Boston are kind of the places to be in New Hampshire right now. I look at these next few slides as really they tell the whole story, I think, for Goffstown as well as our neighbors in New Boston. So this slide shows our cost per pupil for the elementary school level. And you'll see this is a 10-year comparison, but if you look at the last, say, 3-4 years, you're looking at well under the state average on a cost per pupil basis. So again, in the year of 2020, we're looking at an average cost per pupil of over $17,000, while Goffstown is slightly under $14,400. That's a very, very considerable difference. And when you look at the outcomes that we have in terms of how our students are doing, we're getting really, really good return on our investment. Next is our middle school. Again, very similar, trend line here where, we're looking at an even bigger disparity here, over $2,800 difference between what the state average is, which is almost $16,000, whereas Goffstown's a little over $13,000. So again, I think it demonstrates that the school board takes an approach, and supported by the budget committee, of course, to try to really put in our budget things that are absolutely needed for education. And I think it's exemplified here when you look at the trend lines. And then lastly is our high school. And this one here is a little bit noteworthy because it's the trend shifted a little bit. I have to do a little more investigation as to why that was the case in 2020. But again, $1,800 lower than the state average. So I think the trend from all three, elementary, middle, high school, is one that really tells a very, very important story that Goffstown is spending their money very wisely, and they're getting very good outcomes as a result of those funds being spent. Ordinarily, we talk to you about our achievement data, and we show you some of the test scores, whether that be standardized tests at the elementary and middle school or SAT scores, but unfortunately, due to COVID-19, those state testings did not occur. So we don't have any data from last spring. Testing is resuming, just so you know, but we don't have any of that data. I share with you a screenshot of the website, and this is one that our assistant superintendent, Mary Claire Berry, deserves just a massive amount of credit for. I would really encourage you to go on this, she has compiled just a tremendous amount of data on how well Goffstown is doing academically. And there are some areas of improvement, like anything else, but this is more or less your one-stop shopping if you want to see how our students are performing. So again, I would encourage you to go onto the website, and there are just tons of information on achievement data. Academics, as we talk about, is not the only thing that driving force of our schools. It's also about those social bonds and what we do outside the classroom, that we have something to be really tremendously proud of. We have just an awesome community here in Goffstown. And I just wanted to kind of highlight some of those things. So at the high school, we had a girls basketball Division I co-champion. Our football team this past year was a runner-up, came in second in the final game against Nashua. We've had two national merit scholarship qualifiers, 15 students recognized by the All-State Music Association getting honors there. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but you can see just whether it be academics, whether it be sports, music, you're just seeing tremendous success. Mountain View Middle School, also some really good things happen there. There are very few schools that get what's called a Spotlight Award, and that's for, you know, a lot of volunteerism. There's only, I think, seven in the whole state, and Mountain View is one of them. And as you can see, we listed here some of our winners for our Geography B and our Spelling B. Just some of the things to be proud of. That third bullet, you know, when you have food and can drives done both at Mountain View and here at the high school, that really supports our food pantry, especially in this past year where so many families had food security issues. It really is heartwarming to see how our students and our staff rally around our community, and our community rallies around our schools. So just, again, want to acknowledge that. And then we get to the point of the tax rate and the tax impact, and that's something that projecting the tax rate is something that I always am very, very super concerned about myself, because there are so many factors that go into the tax rate. And what I wanted to demonstrate to you here is that everything here is an estimate. And I'll admit, last year, I was very conservative and I overestimated what I thought the tax rate would be. And that's a good thing. I'd rather be overestimated than underestimate. But last year, I thought that we would probably fall in the high 13s, maybe $14, and we ended up with under $13.47. Next year, I'm projecting somewhere around $14.34 to $14.57. Again, and that's on the very conservative side. If we see those increased revenues from the state that I mentioned, that number is going to tick down. If we see greater grant revenue, that number is going to tick down. I strongly believe that number will be a lot less, but I have to try to plan for what are kind of worst case, scenarios. So another big component when you determine the tax rate is what is the overall valuation of the town of Goffstown, and that gets, every year that changes. So we work with the town, and we budget in a 0.5% increase in the total value of what the town is going to go up. And it's well exceeded that. So with a very hot and robust real estate market, I suspect that my 0.5% increase is a way underestimation of what it'll be. That also trends it down. So again, I don't like to be in the business of predicting tax rates, but I think it's fair. You folks are the ones who sign the checks, shall we say, when you vote, and you should know what those consequences are. I just want to let you know that I take a very conservative approach on the revenue side of things, and typically we over exceed our revenue projections by quite a bit. If you do require more information before you vote, please go to the website, and there is, all of our budgets are there, the budget presentations are there, and again, just a ton of information. You can always call me at the SAU, the number's there, and I'll be able to help you out. So with that, I did want one bit of license, if I may. One of the gentlemen that I mentioned, Adam McCune, who helped us at GTV, Adam is moving on, and I want to wish him the best. GTV has been a tremendous partner for the Goffstown School District, covering so many events at our school and in our community, and he's decided to relocate to Florida, and the date is not yet certain, but Adam has been a tremendous friend to the Goffstown community. I think he's made us a whole lot better. I consider him as friend as well, work together with him on broadcast, so I want to wish him all the best, and that's the license that I asked for, so thank you. Actually, you can leave it up. Jared will be up next, and I guess that'll be the next slide. So.
If we have a vote though, Steve, is anybody out there? If we have a vote, I'll need to see in the other room, but I'm hearing from my spies, we don't have anybody. Okay, procedure, thank you, Scott. Procedure on questions. If you have questions or comments, raise your hand, I'll acknowledge you. Come forward and speak in the microphone. If you speak, please introduce yourself. The rules, if you haven't spoken in the last 2 minutes, state your name again because I won't remember it. So with that introduction, if the other questions, Claire. I'm sorry, the mic's up front, even though I know you have strong lungs, it needs to pick up on GTV and the Zoom, so we're still going to ask you to come forward.
Thank you very much, Scott. That was an excellent presentation.
Claire, tell us your name, even though I just said your name.
My name is Claire Roulard. I live on Jasmine Lane in Goffstown. I'm also one of your state representatives. My question, Scott, is on the enrollment slide that you presented. I don't know if the enrollment is from certain years. It's broken down nicely by school, but I'm not certain where the enrollment comes from. For instance, Glen Lake begins with 190 and ends with 179, and Maple Ave begins at 432 and ends at 536. So I'd like to know the time frame for that slide and if more information is available. And after that question, I have a follow-up.
Okay, well, why don't you ask both now so we can get them all out so people can.
You asked me to repeat, ask all my questions at once?
If you have another count, please.
The next question I would have with regard to the years of that, is there a breakdown that we have with regard to the number of students from New Boston in each of the schools and in Goffstown? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Rules of the game. You may pose questions. It's not, I was going to say it's not Perry Mason, but that dates myself. It's not cross-examination. The people they may answer, they're not compelled to. The answer was asked to Scott, so we'll give him, our question was asked to Scott, so we'll give him an opportunity to respond if he chooses. And you can look those up, or if you're ready to answer now, I'll let you do it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Claire. My apologies, the header was missing. It's the last 5 years, essentially. And going to your question about Glen Lake, the Glen Lake one is a little bit different than most other schools because Glen Lake, not only is it a kindergarten school, it's also a preschool. And for preschool, we are required by law at the age of 3 to have any students enrolled in that preschool who have any type of identified special needs. Our program at Glen Lake also has what's called a role model preschool, which means that we have a complementary number of students who have special needs and those who don't, and they serve as role models. Due to COVID-19, we opted not to have those role model students this particular year. So you're seeing that number at Glen Lake a lot lower. I think it's like 40 or 50 kids, role model kids, that we do not have in the school system, but we hope to have in the future. So again, just to recap, it's the last 5 years. The Glen Lake numbers are attributed to role model students who are not in the system right now, but they will presumably re-enroll in the months ahead. Going back to your question, and I'm going to try to cheat. Tori is going to give me like a wink and a nod. But middle school, about 185, Tori, I think, ish.
About 500 total for New Boston.
Yeah, 500 total middle school and high school, but I think it was about 180 or so at the middle school. The balance is, yeah, at the high school. So we have quite a few New Boston students that attend both the 7th and 8th grade at the high school, I'm sorry, at the middle school, and then 9th through 12th at the high school. All right? Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Kimberly? Don't assume I know everybody's name, or if I've known you for 20 or 30 years, I will remember it. I just see Kimberly at the planning board, so it's in my mind.
I'm Kimberly Peace. I'm Kimberly Peace. I'm at Goffstown Back Road, 201 Goffstown Back Road. Is it on?
Steve, will you check the mic?
Is it on?
Tap on it. See if it.
Hello?
Kimberly, why don't you come up to this one while they figure out the mic?
Oh, great. Hi. Sorry, everyone. I'm Kimberly Peace. I'm at 201 Goffstown Back Road. Scott, on the slide for revenue projections, I just wanted a little bit more information about the use of the fund balance because it went from 700,000 to 1,721,432. What is the fund balance? And I think I understand it, but I'm not sure. And why is that such a big difference in revenue from last year to this year? Thank you.
Great question. So the fund balance is comprised of an underspend of your operating budget, as well as an over-collection of what you had expected for your revenues. So last year, due to COVID-19, we saw savings in our budget as a result of transportation. So we didn't transport our kids for 3 months, and we were able to negotiate a lower cost on transportation. We did not have any spring sports, nor did we have any spring type musical co-curriculars. That also had an impact. Because the schools weren't open, we didn't employ substitute teachers, and typically the majority of our substitute teacher line is spent in the spring months. And then on the flip side of it, on the revenue picture side, as I mentioned before, that one-time fiscal capacity disparity aid, we did use $900,000 of that for that project, but the remaining, $450,000 went to tax relief. So it was a kind of a compilation of both. This year, we're going to be in a little bit of a similar, but yet dissimilar position. Our athletic seasons have been shortened because they're just shortened, and we're not traveling as far as we used to be. So we're going to see some savings in there. Similarly, we've had some staff who have opted out, and we've had to kind of be creative in doing some of those types of things. So we're seeing some savings in our budget. And we're also seeing some increased revenue. So I'm hopeful that we're going to see a little bit of a similar trend between last year and this year. But when I plan for FY22, I have to plan in terms of our budget for a normal type school year to a certain degree, not for COVID. So I do expect that last year's and this year's fund balance are going to be fairly robust because of that. And I can't tell how much money the state or feds are going to give us, and those targets change all the time. Our senator is here, and just to give you a great example, I mean, we were expecting like a FEMA grant for PPE to the tune of like a couple $100,000, and then on a Friday at 5 o'clock, it was, right before we were supposed to get the money, it was like, sorry, you're not getting it. So these things happen. And it's very, very challenging from a business operations to not know if your revenues are going to be what they say they're going to be, and it's been a challenge to pull this off. So I think trying to be conservative, but I think it's good news for the taxpayers, recognizing that if we don't spend the budget dollars, they go back the following year to offset your tax rate. So that's really the most important thing that I want to convey to you, is that whatever's not spent, whatever extra revenues we get, goes back to offset the taxes.
Thank you. you know, as Brad and I are exchanging head signals occasionally, it's not some secret code. I'm asking him to check the other room occasionally and see if anybody's there. So far, it's been nobody, Brad, is that correct? Any other questions on the operating budget? Those are good questions. I appreciate Scott's answers. If there are no questions, we will close the discussion on the operating budget and move to Article 3. So it's the last opportunity. Seeing none, we'll go now to Article 3. Ellen, do you have a motion? Okay. No, I'll read it. You just make the motion. And Ginny, you second? Okay, I should have read it first. Let me read it. We're doing this, falling into a hole in the space-time continuum. I'll read it now. To see if the Goffstown School District will vote to raise and appropriate $200,000 for deposit into the existing Facilities Capital Reserve Fund and to authorize the use of that amount from the June 30, 2021 unassigned fund balance, which I believe is what Scott just discussed, available on July 1, 2021. This appropriation is in addition to warrant Article 2, the operating budget. I should have read that before Ellen made her motion, but let's assume I did. And Ginny seconded. Jared, are you speaking to this? I am. Yeah, I recognize Jared Talbot then, please, Jared.
Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to limit reconsideration on warrant Article 2.
Okay, there's been a motion to limit reconsideration on Article 2. Let me explain that. One of the procedures in statute on town meetings, we've seen this before, and I forget the statute, is you can limit reconsideration on a previously discussed matter. You can't do it in advance, but you can do it for something we've discussed so that it cannot be brought back later in the meeting. Some of you recall the good old days, long meetings, everybody but a few people would have left at around midnight. They'd bring up the dump truck that was voted on earlier and voted to reconsider so they could vote it down or whatever. So to prevent that from happening, the legislature adopted the procedure for limiting reconsideration. That's one of the motions I allow without a written motion. So there's been a motion made to limit or restrict reconsideration of Article 2. Is there a second? Brad seconds it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions. Okay, that means we cannot bring back Article 2. So now, thank you, we'll go to Article 3, Jared.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And it's still before noon, so I can still say good morning to everybody. I'm here to talk about our next item, which is our Capital Reserve Fund for $200,000 from our unassigned fund balance. This was a heavily robusted conversation both within the school board and in the budget committee, and it was voted to recommend within the school board 8-1 and voted to recommend in the budget committee 10-2. As discussed, the Capital Reserve Fund is an existing facility asset that was approved a number of years ago by our voters. It had support from our voters for the past few years, and the school district has been very active in updating what is in our capital improvement plan, so our CIP. Just as a note, we have roughly $6 million of items within our CIP over the next 6 years that have been approved to really be fixed within the school systems for our assets. The CRF that we're asking for provides the funding source for fixing those items within our CIP to offset our costs for future updates. So as we've talked about, potentially a new roof within a middle school or within a update to our septic system, this is the ability for us to plan for those activities and not to hit the taxpayers all at one time for those repairs that would be needed. The CRF can also be used for matching some of our grant processes, which again, Scott Gross talked about a little bit earlier. So our current CRF fund balance is roughly $298,000. This comprises, again, 2 years worth of funds within the CRF. Some of that money has already been used on our projects. 2 of those projects where at our high school, on our rear stairs, we had some dangerous stairs within the back made of concrete that were deteriorating over time. We were able to use our CRF to replace that stair system so that we could alleviate those risks to our students or anybody using the stairs during the winter. We also completed a lighting retrofit project for $16,000, and that really was able to reduce our overall cost over time for electricity. As we know, as we update our lights, as we update to better electronics, it uses less energy. That's going to be less cost over time for some of our electrical use within the school systems. Some of our projects that have been approved by the school board but are still waiting some requests for pricing are our heating controls at Bartlett and Maple schools, which roughly is going to cost $160,000. Another item is in the middle school, our fire sustain repairs are estimated to cost $85,000. Again, those are out for RFP, but those funds have been approved from the school board, and when we actually get those RFPs back, we will, of course, move forward with those projects. Our tax impact. So, as stated from our moderator for warrant article number 3, this is to deposit $200,000 from our unassigned fund balance into the existing capital reserve fund for our existing capital assets. I want to emphasize existing. This is not to purchase new capital assets or net new capital assets for the school. This must be an existing asset within the school that we are replacing. That's what this fund is used for, and we are very diligent and have healthy debate about those items during our school board. There is no direct tax impact to warrant article number 3 as written, as the funds to be used would come from our unassigned fund balance as of June 30th, 2021, which we are expecting some money to be there. The unassigned fund balance is a combination of unspent monies from our current operating budget or an over-collection of revenues from our local, state, and federal agencies. If for some reason, and I'm glad Scott Gross put this in there, I'm going to start calling it the Scott Gross rule. If this was voted down, this would approximately be 11 cents to our tax rate if this was voted down. So it would be 11-cent reduction to our tax rate that we would have for the next fiscal year. And with that, I'll conclude and turn it back.
Watching Steve do that so adeptly, I can appreciate that there are people, Lou, I hate to say this, we're dinosaurs in technology who can do this easily. So, before we ask questions on the substance, anybody have any questions on the Capital Reserve Fund? Dad gave a quick we see those a lot. I mean, it's not new, but we have them in the budget. Okay, anybody have any other questions on Article 3 in general? Seeing none, I will close the discussion. Brad's still nobody out there, so I'll close the discussion on Article 3. Jared, do you want to make a motion as to?
I'll make the motion to limit consideration on article number 3.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. That concludes the discussion of the warrant. There are only 3 warrant articles versus election, which is the business part of the meeting. As we do traditionally, we're honored to have our state senator, Lou D'Alessandro, here, and I would like to give him a few minutes to tell him how he is going to solve all of the state's fiscal problems, meet all the educational needs, and do all the other things that we need doing in about 3 minutes. Lou? I'll give him a little extra time.
get this down. First of all, as always, thank you, Mr. Moderator, for an outstanding job. You know, many good jobs go unsung, and I must say that having been to these meetings year after year after year, I see nothing better than the moderator. He's really tops, and we're lucky to have him. And to the members of the board, congratulations on doing a good job as you do every year, and looking out for the students and looking out for the taxpayers. And that's a wonderful accomplishment. And I served on the school board in Manchester for 10 years. It was the toughest job I ever had. Believe me, so congratulations on a job well done. Public education is fundamental in a democracy, and the support of public education is an imperative. If we want to keep democracy, if we want to keep good government, and we want to keep an educated public, we've got to have quality public education. The attacks on public education have been numerous over the years. We've got to abate those, because the destruction of public education is the commendation of a free society. Please keep that in mind, and you're here to support public education, and you recognize the value of public education. We've undergone some very serious problems with this pandemic. And one of the problems is mental health of youngsters and suicide among youngsters. That's a terrible, terrible situation, and it's a crisis that we have to deal with. We had 27 young people on a waiting list for mental health services as of yesterday. We had 90 adults on the waiting list. The results of this pandemic are far-reaching, far-reaching. Socialization, we're social animals. Socialization takes place in our schools. That's diminished. Now in Goffstown, you've had a hybrid system which helps to some extent. But across the nation, we've seen tragedy after tragedy after tragedy because of the fact that we're not getting back to school. We've got to get back to school. And what's the key to getting back to school? It's getting everybody vaccinated. And by getting people vaccinated and creating, you know, the herd situation, we're able to abate the virus. And that's something we've really got to do. We've got a good system in place. I realize that there have been some discouraging situations with people signing up for the virus, but indeed Perry Plum has done a very good job. The system hasn't crashed. There have been problems, there are glitches, but indeed, generally speaking, things are going well. And I encourage everyone to get the vaccine. I think it's extremely important. Now, with regard to the school funding issue, a commission was funded in the last budget. That commission was funded with a $500,000 appropriation to look at adequacy, because as you know, we still have a couple of suits that are in place challenging adequacy. This commission made a report in December. I advise all of you who can to look at that report and to see what direction people think the state should go in. Now, we've had a couple of problems with funding. I spoke to the school board here in Goffstown. I'll speak to the school board in Manchester. We're trying to correct that, and one of the problems was free and reduced price lunch. People signing up, everybody got free and reduced because nobody signed up because of the pandemic. That's one of the issues that has to be taken care of. I've talked with Scott about that. I've talked with your superintendent about that. I've talked to the superintendent in Manchester. There are a couple of pieces of legislation that are going through that will deal with that. There are a couple of other pieces of legislation that aren't very good. So I hope that you'll pay attention to those. With regard to the state operating budget, we did close the first fiscal year of our biennium with a deficit. We have to deal with that deficit. Our revenues have been pretty good. up to this point for this year. The significant money will come in March and April, and that'll ascertain whether or not we can cure the deficit and move forward. The deficit right now is, if you looked at the CAFR, and that's the financial statement, it was about $66 million. We lapsed a lot of money in the first year of the biennium. We're going to lapse over $100 million in the second year of the biennium. That's a concern that I have. We'll have to deal with that. But generally speaking, I think the stick-to-itiveness and the courage of the people of the state of New Hampshire manifest our success in dealing with these problems. The number of deaths that have been occurring because of the virus are basically people who are 60 years of age and older, and many of them occur in long-term care facilities. I wrote an op-ed piece about long-term care facilities and how they've got to be upgraded, and let's hope that can happen, so that if we have another problem like this, we can deal with it. I've had the honor and privilege of serving the town of Goffstown and 4 wards in the city of Manchester for a number of years. I'm entering my 24th year as a member of the New Hampshire State Senate. One of the great privileges I have is addressing problems and trying to solve problems with people. And one of the problems that we tried to solve was the vaccine situation and finding the best methodology to serve people who want the vaccine. And we're working on that. I'm working on that. And as I said, I think Perry Plummer's doing a good job. So to all of you who came out today, thank you so much for coming. I mean, this is a very important issue. The schools are so important. And I've been a teacher all of my life. And indeed, one of the great rewards of my life has been the students who I taught have come back and who have supported me. And I think teachers deserve just a great deal of credit for hanging in and doing good things. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for the opportunity. I thank all of you for coming. Wish you all a great, great, great American Day. Stay happy, stay healthy, and keep the dream alive and well. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou. It's really an honor to have a state senator come to this meeting every year. We appreciate your coming. That really concludes our business. I'd like to thank the Heather and the School Board Budget Committee. I'd like to thank the staff. Joe and Claire, thank you for coming as state reps. Steve, Josh, Denise, Brian, Scott, Adam, if you're still here. Putting on a school meeting during a pandemic is not an easy task. You can see the effort that went into it, and I think we should thank the school board and the staff for being able to do it so well. And most importantly, I thank you for coming. This is an important event. I know it's not traditionally well attended recently, but it still is an important part of the town, and I appreciate your coming. So thank you. Brad, do you have a motion? Is there a second? It's been seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. That ends our meeting.